Okay, so it sounds like we have like a general idea, a lot of good talking going on about our needs. And again, this isn't a needs assessment. A needs assessment takes much, much longer. If you ever want to know about that, talk to Sarah because she did that last year, our community needs assessment. So really, here we're just going to do like a community needs assessment. So let's start with Kim. What did you identify as your first priority?
Well, I didn't put anything, I was thinking too much. I was trying to think of something like for senior citizens,
Okay.
but,
Oh, no, that's a good place to start. So for senior
Yeah.
citizens, like,
but then Nancy was saying that there is stuff out there for senior citizens that,
but, and this is something we run into at TBS all the time. If they don't know about it, then does it do them any good? Right? So we could say,
Right,
senior citizens lack,
knowledge of services, or?
right, knowledge of existing services. Okay, so in terms of addressing that need and like putting on a level, where would we place that need? Community, it could be a community thing, because, you know, maybe perhaps those agencies that provide those services, well, actually, that'd be more of an agency level need. But perhaps, you know, our community is set out in such a way that maybe people, you know, that information isn't readily available to folks. So that would be a community level need, exactly. We got C there. Okay, and then Cecilia, what did you identify as your number one priority?
Well, to provide individuals with skills to help them become more self-sufficient through training and education.
Okay, so that's more again of a service, like you're giving me the service, right? So your need would be individuals lack training.
Training.
Or job skills
work-
training, or?
Right,
Okay.
work skills.
Okay. And so what level of need would that be?
That'd be a family.
Right. Forgive my handwriting. It hasn't changed since third grade too much. I guess that would be my family level need. Let's see, Nancy, what'd you identify?
Emergency services with funding for housing, rent, utility, food.
You know, we definitely run into that one a lot. I know, working front desk. So, again, are we talking about people lack knowledge of those services, or are we talking about those
Just the
services aren't there?
Just the service.
Okay, services themselves aren't there.
So that would be.
So that's community.
Going,
Let's see, and Angela?
Affordable, accessible, and appropriate, adequate transportation for low-income individuals in outlining communities like Chaparral.
Oh, definitely. That's another one too. Let's see, I'm gonna truncate this one just a bit, so we can move along, but. And then finally, Cesar.
I changed mine.
Okay.
High school students lack money for college.
High school, okay. And so what level would that be?
Family?
Yes. Excellent. Yeah, we're gonna do a little truncation. All right, so everyone's done a really good job of identifying all of the needs and everything and specifying the levels, so I couldn't have asked for a better thing. So for the purposes for the rest of the day, we're gonna pick one of these needs and kind of address it and make it our need that we address with our outcomes that we run through. So just by a quick majority of rules, who thinks that the biggest need in our community is senior citizens lack knowledge of existing services? Okay, how about individuals lack job skills training? And you just put up your hands, majority rules. Okay. Community lacks emergency services. Okay. Community lacks affordable, accessible transportation for low-income people in outer-line counties.
Yeah, I can see
Okay.
that.
Two. And then finally, high school students lack money for college. Oh dear, we have a tie. Okay, so between these two, who thinks the biggest need
That's
is
a tiebreaker.
community lacks affordable, accessible transportation for low-income people in outer-line communities? Who thinks that one is the biggest need between just these two?
Well, high school students can get the lottery scholarship. And they can take out a loan.
Indeed. Okay, so I take it everyone thinks that the biggest need in our community is high school students lack dollars for college? Right. So that seems to be our
But
consensus.
I think there should be something where they don't have to get those stupid student loans. There should be
Well, they
grants, and more grants and
yeah.
stuff to where they can,
But they do have a lottery scholarship.
yeah, but that's,
So it looks like if I'm reading everyone's hands correctly, this one is our winner here. All right?
yep.
Okay.
I
Right up.
guess, my hand didn't talk loud enough.
Yeah, you were supposed to be the breaking,
There you go.
But see, the
There
thing
was
is,
Nancy.
the thing is,
There you go.
CSBG, they used to give us money for those kind of services, but they don't anymore.
That's a shame.
So we have our need for the day. And so we're gonna turn back to our logic model real quick. In for need. And we're gonna put this one here. There we go. So that's where that goes, our logic model, as we progress throughout the day. So if we'll turn to page 25, we're going to go into our customers. And customer is kind of an interesting word here because generally when we talk about people who receive services, we speak about clients, generally speaking. But Drucker prefers the word customer just because, I think a lot of it has to do with that old idiom, the customer is always right. But this idea that people are active agents who are coming in and they're not passive, we're working in coordination with them so that they can achieve self-sufficiency. Okay, so could I have someone read the bullets under who are our customers? That's gonna be on page 25.
The primary customers who are the recipients of services and whose lives will be impacted by direct participation, and the supporting customers who may be funders, policymakers, family members, partners, and others who have input into services.
Excellent. Okay, and so basically, the really big important part of that is that there's never just one customer. You always have secondary customers who, although they might not be receiving services directly, are stakeholders in the community and are affected by the services that you provide or that you don't provide. So the other important takeaway from that is that, aside from the fact that you must assess both kinds of your customers, is that your customers change. Customer groups aren't static. Their needs, their characteristics, their wants, their aspirations are constantly evolving, just like with any business. And it's important for agencies to think about how customers will change. So if we look, it kind of sets us up for this next question here. Number 3, what does the customer value? So this question is used to ascertain what programs and services make a difference in customers' lives. From the customer's perspective, that's really important. As used by Drucker, this question is specifically targeted to elicit customers' input. So again, there's that importance of collaborating with the customer, or the client in our case, working with them and really seeing what they value and what they need. And Drucker also points out that leadership should not even try to guess at the answers, but should always go to the customers in a systematic quest for the answers. which is why, when Sarah was doing our community needs assessment, she interviewed people. She passed out the surveys and everything to get that customer input. So one of the things that we run into as a nonprofit, or some nonprofit agencies run into, is we make assumptions based on our own interpretations of customer needs, which is kind of like what we were doing here, just for the purposes of that exercise. So to begin with assumptions and find out what you believe customers value, which we did. Then you can compare these beliefs and what customers are actually saying. You can find the differences and you can go in and assess your results. And again, agencies must understand both their primary and supporting customers. And finally, listen to customers, accept what they value as objective fact, and make sure the customer's voice is part of your discussions and decisions, not just during the self-assessment process, but continuously, as you're moving, as you're evaluating your program, etc. If there is a perceived value to your client, there's a higher likelihood that the program or service is beneficial to the customer, and a higher likelihood that the program or service intervention or your program will have a better outcome. Okay. So if we'll turn to page 26 real quick, it's basically just differentiating between the types of data. So we have qualitative data, which again we can get via interviews and things of that nature, which gives us depth, breadth, opinions, and observations. So if we were collecting qualitative data, about our population, which we've identified as Las Cruces for this scenario, who would we talk to in order to get that information, that qualitative data?
Our clients.
Our clients, definitely. Who else?
Community members.
Our community members, very important. And one other group specifically, think about that fourth element of mission statements, partnership.
Different agencies.
Different agencies, exactly. Because sometimes there are agencies that address needs that we don't, and they might have better insight into needs that we don't address and what clients are facing. And perhaps according to that, we form actual partnerships. So qualitative data, as you guys kind of pointed out, is usually collected through interviews, surveys, and observations. And again, one of the quick things, because they can be kind of confused with qualitative and quantitative, just think L for language. That's how you get qualitative data. And then when we look at quantitative data, which is a little different, again, the N there is for numbers as opposed to the L and qualitative being for language. Quantitative data, we generally think about that as demographic data or demographic characteristics, and it gives us information in specific categories. So if we're gathering quantitative data, where would we look?
NASCAP.
Yes, absolutely.
That'd be a start, government
That'd be
data
a
in general.
Yes, NASCAPs.
Client tracking.
Client tracking, our databases, our census reports if necessary. Absolutely, that's what we're doing when we're looking for quantitative data. And quantitative data is usually aggregated from other sources, so is often considered secondary, meaning that all the information directly gathered from subjects is gathered total, and the total number of responses is produced. So a good example of that would be like, for instance, what our community needs assessment did is it took survey answers, which were qualitative, and it turned them into quantitative data. When we looked at like 33% of the people identified, this is a need in the community, it basically transformed something qualitative into something quantitative. So in this module, we are presenting the concept of using qualitative data and quantitative data to identify needs and resources. Later on in Drucker, the data is being used to identify outcomes, which is something we'll get into. And so we also need to briefly address community resources, because it's important for an agency to know what resources are available as well as what is needed. And this kind of goes to what Nancy was speaking about earlier, where, if we as an agency don't know what services are available in the community, it makes it really difficult for us to make referrals or to direct people to other agencies that might address their needs. So I'm going to have someone read the top shaded paragraph on page 27, and I'll go with Cesar.
When establishing a community profile, it is not sufficient to assess only needs. An important aspect of community assessments is identifying the resources that are currently available or are being developed to address the problem, needs, or situation in the community.
Thank you, Cesar. So again, how do you know what new resources are being developed? And again, this would we can just go around the room real quick instead of making it a formal activity.
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry, since you're starting the activity. It does, I did ask, did everybody order from Jason's?